The night of the Blackthorn Moon ceremony was supposed to be the proudest night of Alira Sinclair's life. Instead, it became the night that broke her heart in front of the entire kingdom. She stood at the edge of the great hall, dressed in a simple gray gown, watching as wolves from every corner of Blackthorn Ridge gathered beneath the silver moonlight. The ceremony was ancient. Once every generation, the moon revealed to an Alpha King the identity of his fated mate, the one soul bound to his by blood and destiny. Everyone expected King Ronan Voss to be paired with a noblewoman from one of the great packs. No one expected the moon's light to fall on Alira, the quiet Omega girl from a disgraced, broken pack that most nobles refused to even acknowledge. When the light touched her shoulders and Ronan's eyes met hers across the hall, the room went silent. She saw the shock on his face first. Then the anger. Then something colder, something that made her stomach twist with dread. "There must be a mistake," Ronan said, his voice carrying across the hall like a blade. But the moon did not make mistakes. Everyone knew that. And everyone also knew what happened next would decide the fate of 2 lives. Ronan Voss had not always been so cold. As a boy, he had been gentle, curious, full of laughter. But that had changed the night an Omega assassin from a rival pack slipped past every guard and murdered his parents in their sleep. Ronan had been 12 years old, hiding behind a curtain, watching the Omega girl's face as she did it, calm and expressionless, as if she felt nothing at all. From that night forward, Ronan swore he would never again be vulnerable to an Omega. He built walls around his heart so thick that even his own advisors feared bringing him bad news, let alone soft ones. So when the moon chose Alira, a girl from a pack once accused of harboring traitors, Ronan's old wound tore open all over again. "I will not mark her," he announced, loud enough for the whole court to hear. "Fate can choose whoever it wants. I choose my kingdom." Alira felt every eye in the room turn to her, felt the whispers rising like smoke, felt the humiliation burn her cheeks. She did not cry, not there, not in front of them. She simply lowered her head, turned, and walked out of the hall with as much dignity as she could gather. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, Alira had been given a small room in the palace, more out of formality than kindness. Nobles avoided her in the halls. Servants whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. And Ronan avoided her most of all, as though she were something dangerous he could not risk getting close to. Yet there were small things Alira noticed, things that confused her. Extra firewood appeared in her room on cold nights. A guard was always stationed near her door, though Ronan claimed it was only for the kingdom's protection, not hers. Once, she caught him watching her from across the courtyard, and when their eyes met, he looked away so quickly it was almost as if he had been caught doing something forbidden. She told herself it meant nothing. A king does not fear losing what he refuses to claim. What Alira did not tell anyone, not even herself for a long time, was that something strange had begun happening inside her. It started as warmth, a gentle heat that pooled in her palms whenever she sensed danger nearby. At first, she thought she was imagining it. Then, one evening, a drunken guard stumbled toward her, with rough hands and rougher intentions, and the warmth in her palms turned to light, a soft golden glow that made the man stumble back in fear before he could touch her. He never spoke of it, neither did she. That night, Alira dreamed of a woman she had never met, dressed in armor made of moonlight, standing before a wounded king with her arms outstretched, a shimmering shield blooming from her hands. When Alira woke, her heart was pounding, and she could have sworn she heard a voice whisper, "You are a warden. You were born to protect him, whether he wants you or not." She did not know what a warden was. Her pack's history had been erased so thoroughly after their disgrace that even the elders no longer remembered their own bloodline's secrets. But something inside her recognized the word, the way a person recognizes a name they have not heard since childhood. She kept the dream to herself, along with the growing warmth in her hands, along with the fear that if anyone discovered what she was becoming, they would call her a monster instead of a miracle. While Alira wrestled with her secret, danger was gathering in the shadows of Blackthorn Ridge. The Ashgrave clan, longtime rivals of the Voss bloodline, had grown tired of losing territory to Ronan's strength. They could not defeat him in open battle, not with his pack's numbers and his own formidable power. So they turned to something crueler, They found a traitor within the palace walls, a lord who had lost his lands to Ronan's father years ago and never forgiven the family for it. Together, they forged a blade of pure silver, the one substance capable of killing an alpha permanently. Bond or no bond, healing or no healing. Ronan had heard whispers of unrest among the Ashgrave clan, but he dismissed them the way he dismissed most warnings these days, certain that his strength alone was enough to keep his kingdom safe. Pride had a way of making even the smartest kings blind. The attack came during the harvest rite, a public ceremony held in the throne hall where the entire court gathered to honor the changing season. Elira attended only because attendance was required of every Omega in the palace, standing near the back where she always stood, trying to make herself as small and unnoticed as possible. The traitor lord stood near the front, close enough to Ronan that no one thought twice about his presence. When the ceremonial drums reached their peak, and every eye turned toward the fire at the center of the hall, he moved. The silver blade flashed once in the torchlight, before it plunged toward Ronan's heart. Elira did not remember deciding to run. One moment she was standing at the back of the hall, and the next she was moving faster than she had ever moved in her life, faster than should have been possible, weaving through startled bodies as though the crowd itself had opened a path just for her. She heard someone scream. She heard Ronan turn, his eyes widening as he saw the blade too late to stop it. She threw herself between him and the blade. The silver tore into her side instead of his heart, and the pain that followed was unlike anything she had ever felt, a burning cold that spread through her veins like poison, because that was exactly what it was. But even as she fell, even as darkness crept into the edges of her vision, the warmth in her palms exploded outward, no longer a small glow, but a brilliant shield of golden light that surrounded her and Ronan both, knocking the traitor backward and pinning him to the ground as though an invisible hand had struck him. The entire hall fell silent, staring at the Omega girl who lay bleeding on the floor, wrapped in light no one in living memory had ever seen. Ronan dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering over her wound, unsure whether to touch the glowing light or fear it. "Elira," he said, his voice cracking in a way the court had never heard from their king. "Elira, look at me." Her eyes fluttered open, glassy with pain, but she managed a small, tired smile. "I told you," she whispered, "fate does not make mistakes." The kingdom's healers rushed forward, but they knew, as everyone in the hall knew, that silver wounds could not be healed by ordinary medicine. Only an alpha's mark, given freely and completely, carried enough power to purge silver poison from a mate's blood. It was an old truth, one Ronan had spent his whole reign refusing to test. He did not hesitate this time. "Forgive me," he said, so quietly it was almost only for her. Then he bent down and marked her, completing the bond he had denied for 3 long weeks, pouring his own strength and life force into her trembling body. Warmth spread from the mark through Elira's veins, chasing away the cold poison inch by inch. The golden light around them pulsed once, twice, and then settled into something softer, something that looked almost like the moonlight from the ceremony that had first bound them together. When she opened her eyes again, truly opened them, Ronan was still there, refusing to leave her side, even as healers argued that the danger had passed. His hands, usually so steady and commanding, trembled as he brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I was wrong about you," he admitted, his voice raw. "I built walls to keep myself safe from another Omega who might hurt me, and instead, I nearly let one who would have died for me walk away unloved." Elira, still weak but healing quickly now that the bond was complete, studied his face for a long moment. "You were afraid," she said softly. "I understand fear. I have lived with it every day since the ceremony. But fear should not decide who we refuse to love." In the days that followed, the truth of Elira's bloodline spread through the kingdom like wildfire, though not the kind of fire that burned. She was no ordinary Omega, and certainly not the weak, disgraced girl the court had once dismissed. She was the last living descendant of the Warden line, wolves born generations ago for one sacred purpose: to shield an Alpha King with their own bodies and blood, using magic thought lost to history. Her family's disgrace, it turned out, had never been treachery at all, but a lie spread by enemies who feared what a true Warden bloodline could do if it ever bonded with a king again. The traitor lord and his Ashgrave allies were exposed and dealt with swiftly, their conspiracy unraveling once guards searched the palace and found proof of the plot hidden in the traitor's own chambers. The kingdom that had once whispered cruel words about Elira now spoke her name with something closer to reverence. But it was Ronan's transformation that surprised the court most of all. The cold, guarded king, who had once refused to even look at his fated mate, now rarely left her side. He sat with her during her recovery, listened to her quietly, and for the first time since his parents' deaths, allowed himself to be seen as something other than untouchable. "I do not deserve the loyalty you showed me," he told her one evening, as she sat wrapped in blankets by the fire, her strength slowly returning. "You could have let that blade find me. No one would have blamed you. Not after how I treated you." Elira shook her head gently. "I did not save you because you deserved it," she said. "I saved you because that is who I am. But I am glad, truly glad, that you are becoming someone worth protecting for more than duty." Ronan reached for her hand, and for the first time, she did not feel him hold back. Weeks later, when Elira was strong enough to stand at his side during the kingdom's formal announcement, Ronan did not present her as a burden he had been forced to accept, nor as a strange power the court should fear. He presented her exactly as she was, the woman who had taken a silver blade meant for his heart, the last warden of an ancient bloodline, and the queen who would rule beside him, not out of fate's obligation, but out of a love neither of them had expected, yet both had come to need. The kingdom that once mocked her now bowed before her, and Ronan, the king who had once refused to mark his omega, spent the rest of his reign making certain the world knew exactly how much he cherished her. Their bond, forged in fear and completed in near loss, became the strongest Blackthorn Ridge had ever known, a reminder to every generation that followed that true strength is not found in walls built to keep love out, but in the courage to let it in before it is too late.